Okay, so doctor, one more question before we throw it out to the audience. There's this thing that they say that sickle cell is a black man's disease. How true is that?
Thank you. It's largely true, but I would say it's a disease that occurs in the tropics. It's just that the tropics is where blacks mostly are. So, but if you look at what we call the malaria belt, across where we have malaria, where it's distributed across the world, and you superimpose the sickle cell map, they're one and the same. Sickle cell is related to malaria. There's a relationship. I think Dickiness mentioned earlier that ASs tend to be stronger. Okay, ASs, those who are carriers of the condition, but of the gene, but don't have the disease, are actually immune to a very large extent to malaria. They hardly ever die from malaria. In the history of cerebral malaria, that's the worst kind of malaria one can have, malaria parasites entering the brain, there's been none that's been found to be AS. They're mostly AAs. Okay, and that was nature threw up this S gene hundreds or eons ago to keep the species alive, to keep the species going, because the species was dying off when there were AAs. So he threw up this. That's how nature does sometimes in its wisdom. Throws up a gene to sustain the species, to keep it going and keep it alive. But I don't think nature reckoned with S and S coming together and having a full-blown SS the way we have it now. But however, the ASs are very, very much immune to malaria. They don't have complications of malaria that are fatal. That's as far as that's concerned. Sorry, I lost my trend of thought.
I said, I know I can understand.
Whether it's a black man's disease, etc. But we have it in America, definitely, because slaves were moved from here to the New World. You have it in the UK, many black people are there. But you also have it in the Mediterranean, amongst people in that area, the Middle East as well, some in the Indian subcontinent, but mostly it is in Africa and across the tropics. Okay.
Thank you. Okay, so we're throwing it out to the audience. Any questions? Question? Anyone with a question? We have one over there.
Good evening, everyone. My question is to the pastor. Sir, when do you draw the line between spirituality, faith, and the decisions you make, that is a marriage?
All right. Let me just say, it's not so much about being a pastor. Even then, I wasn't a pastor. Then I was just a brother. So, so it's not because okay, it's because I'm a pastor and I want to faith it. But let me tell you, I think what happened was that, and I think I said it in the video, but we couldn't play the video now, that when two people, when they want to go, I think the first thing, not the last thing, I think the first thing, even before the man came at all, once he's just trying to be nice to you, is to ask, what's your genotype? I think the mistake we made was because we waited until we got to a point of no return. I call it a point of no return because I think about 2 or 3 months ago, we had cause to counsel a couple. I mean, not a couple, okay. Two guys who wanted to get married. And it was like 3 weeks to their introduction. And they were coming. And they had already found out that both of them were AS. So they called us because we have an experience. Then they called some other pastors. And they said, come and advise these guys. And I told them point blank that if I were you, and I hope you listen to me, but if I were you, I would tell you, don't go ahead. But just as I said that, it's a point of no return. I knew that they were going to get married. Some other pastors were saying, why are they recalcitrant? Why are they disobedient? I said, forget it. These guys are already locked. They can't go back on this. And at the end of the day, we said we did all we could. We invited their parents so that everybody would be in the know of what they're going into. But we knew that they were going to get married, and they got married. So what I'm saying is that in our own case, we did it last. And by the time we got the result, we were already locked. And probably if it had come before, maybe before we started dating at all, or we started courting, maybe we would have said, okay, we can't do this. And maybe some people will prevail and say, okay, you guys can't do this. But it was like maybe 2 months, February, okay, few months to the wedding. So it was like, that was when the faith thing came. So we decided to switch on to faith. That okay, maybe it's possible that, with what do you call it, with knowledge and understanding now, just at what Dr. Akinshete said. You plot the graph and you say, well, maybe it's 1 out of 4 possibilities, and once, why should it be the only option that will happen to you? You still have 3 options. It's 25 over 100. So, but just as she said, a lot of people don't even know that you could have the 25% recurring in every pregnancy. And she already said that there was somebody who had 7 children and 7 of them. So for me, for us, it's not so much about faith, even though we dare to switch to faith because we had entered the point of no return. But and I will say it here and now, that if you have that opportunity to know that both of you are AS, please don't. And I'm saying that because we've gone through, my wife, she's a woman of steel. For me, many times I had broken down. In fact, she's just what kind of a woman? Maybe because I don't like pain. As I'm standing and as I'm sitting here, I don't know the last time I took injection. The last time that the doctor wanted to do it, I ran away from the hospital. She thought I was joking when she was saying that, oh, you're going to take injection. I said, I'm not taking injection. I can't take it. He said, what do you mean? A man like you say you're not taking injection? I said, I'm not taking injection. I said, I've not taken injection for close to 15 years, and I prefer to take drugs. He said, no, you are going to take it. And I saw he was getting serious. And I just walked out of the hospital. So for somebody like me who doesn't like pain, I will now see a child, a 5-year-old, a 10-year-old going through excruciating pain. I've been to his room one time, and the pain was so terrible that he was speaking in tongues. He was just speaking in tongues and it was like getting delirious. And I was just standing there. Just as she said, you can't help. At that moment, you can't help. And I was just looking at him. I just walked out of that room and I started crying. That is the kind of thing that I don't want any other person to get into. I don't think any kind of love should make anybody to get into it. No, it shouldn't happen. Apart from what I go through as a parent, we thank God, you spend a lot of money. But I even say that for us, I think God has been kind to us, that we haven't spent that kind of money that people talk about. I think the worst that we've ever done was when he went into crisis and we spent maybe about 100 to 150,000. But I've heard cases where people spend millions for a particular crisis. So, but it is not even about you or the money that you're spending. You got yourself into it. But for me, for the child, and that is what I want us to take away from here, that it is not about you. It is for that child. Because you are not going to go through the pain, even though you feel it. But I tell you, it's a case study in philosophy, that do you feel another person's pain? You can say that, I feel the pain. Oh, I feel the pain. It's a lie. It's the person that bears that pain, that feels the pain. And unfortunately, you can't communicate it. Mm. You can't tell the person that, this is the kind of pain. If you say it from now to tomorrow, he will just empathize with you. But he doesn't feel it. So for back to your question, I just have to do that because I don't know if I'll have another opportunity to say. But just to say, it's not just about faith. And let me tell you, I don't think that God made a mistake for allowing us to have medical doctors and to tell us what to do. So the idea of you using faith, I tell you that I have faith like a mountain, but yet I have an SS child. So which means that I've seen bishops and people like that who have SS child. Is it that they don't have faith? So it's not about faith. And we shouldn't bring faith into this equation at all. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Do we have anybody else in the audience? Okay. Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so very briefly, ma'am.
You have spoken as a parent, and that's understandable. But from the point of view of the medical team, we cannot dictate to people. You have prescribed now. We cannot prescribe like that. However, we do insist that prospective couples, avail themselves of genetic counseling, which is a structured, comprehensive way of putting all the information out there for them to know. And no sugarcoating at all. And statistics show that couples that have gone through genetic counseling, 80% of them go their separate ways if they are AS. So I don't have that kind of fear that too many, but there will still be a few, that 20% that will still go on. So we have to know that they will take them under our wings and take care of the children.
Thank you. Thank you, ma'am. Next question.
Okay, doctor, this question is for you. I'm AS myself, and I was once involved with an SS. I didn't know until he had his first crisis in my presence. And as at then, we were neck deep into the relationship. But cut the long story short, I decided that, okay, I was going to go ahead and then bear children at some point, adopt children. Okay, I did research, and then I found out about the CVS and some other options and all that. Then later on, I decided that I'm not sure I'm going to be able to survive my decision. Okay, so in the long run, I cut it short. While telling a friend about this program.
What's the question?
That's the question I want to say now. The friend said the reason he doesn't come for programs like this is because we don't give options to people, that there are options actually. We just say don't go ahead and all that. So that's why he doesn't come for events like this. So now my question is, what would you say to that person? How expensive are these options? Can we survive it and all that? That's my question.
Thank you. To add to that, there's also a question about the fact that they said medically you can test the unborn child before you have the child, so you can have the option of aborting. Can you also speak to that?
I think the young lady actually said something about CVS. That is, couples can know the genotype of their unborn child in early pregnancy. And we do that in our center, but it's not for abortions. It's so that they know in good, because let me tell you, pregnancy is a phase in a couple's life that they want to enjoy. They don't want that anxiety, so they need to put it to rest. They want to know, is this child I'm carrying SS? And if so, they come to terms with it and know that there is a medical team there that will take them under their wings and begin to institute preventive measures that will prevent all those signs and symptoms that I said occur, even before there's any sign, by giving antibiotics, preventive, prophylactic antibiotics, and vaccinations and so on. So that's there. But when people ask to what end, it's not for abortion. We'd never, ever encourage that. Never.
So are you trying to say that if I'm pregnant, or if someone is pregnant with an SS child and they find out early, you can give antibiotics that prevents them from having any symptoms when you have the baby?
Okay, it's not that the pregnant woman takes antibiotics. The child is born.
Okay.
When the child is born, they begin to give that child antibiotics and vaccines. Okay. There's a particular bacterium called Salmonella that tends to kill them. But when you give them vaccinations against Salmonella, they do well. Those are the statistics I gave you, 100,000 that don't live up to the age of 5, they die from Salmonella, mostly. Okay. So when you give them all these preventative measures,
they live longer.
They live well.
Okay. I think there's somebody else that was raising
Good
up his-
evening. Good evening. Question is here.
Yes.
I have, first of all, I have a comment and then I have two questions. The first comment is when people, because I'm AS and I was in a couple of relationships where when we determined the genotype, we ended it. Because I would say to the person, when you give me the faith story, that if you had so much faith, change your genotype first. Use your faith to become AA. I will not do that at the expense of a child, because if you have grown up with people that had sickle cell, you will know that it is not an option. So faith is not the issue here. That's my comment. My question is that now we hear that with technology you can determine the genotype of the child by doing IVF. So there's a selection. So I wanted to ask Dr. Akishete, is that really true? Can you determine what your child's genotype will be? I'm not asking if you can check and then now do an abortion or take care of the child. I'm asking if you can determine the genotype of the child before the child is born through IVF. And then my second question is that many people don't seem to know about the combination that is AC and SC. And then the people that know make excuses to themselves that, you know, SC is not as bad as SS. But I've had a friend that was SC and she had bad crisis. So I would like us to talk a little bit about AC and SC. Thank you.
Okay, I'll take that last question first. There are different kinds of hemoglobin. A C hemoglobin is also a sickle cell disorder, and it can combine with S plus C disease, and it is a less severe manifestation of sickle cell disorder than the S and S. Not that you can have a severe type as well, but generally they tend to be less severe. Okay, and the truth is there are hundreds and thousands, in fact, of different kinds of hemoglobin. Most of them are compatible with life and health. They don't cause any illness, and you wouldn't even know. There's something they call Philadelphia, G Philadelphia. There's one we've discovered in our center that's going to be named Lagos. There's Ibadan, there's Delta, and so on. It's countless. But the ones that cause disease are thalassemia, C, S, and so on. Then your first question about what options there are. Yes, indeed, you can. There's something you can do in vitro that is outside of the body. In vivo is within the human body, you know, within the living body. In vitro, like, is in the laboratory. So where you manipulate the cells, the spermatozoa and the ova and the eggs, and determine which one is carrying a gene for sickle cell, and pre-select the ones that don't have sickle cell gene, and combine them in the laboratory and produce an embryo that is AA. And in the same vein, in many parts of the world, the Western world, you can select a child who has blue eyes, tall, muscular, depending on what you want. Ethically, in ethics, because I did also medical ethics, it's not ethical. There's a very gray area that I wouldn't even want to go into. And as a Catholic, I'm Catholic, conception begins with that first spark, when there's a combination of the sperm and the egg cell. So don't even talk to me about that. They say there are options, but for me, there are no options. Okay.
In building relationships that last, it begins with improving one's self-esteem, looking beyond face value, and choosing the right partner. You too can have the marriage of your dreams.